Okay. Listeners, welcome to the inaugural, I said that right, the inaugural, the first Books on Tap Live, PW's new author interview video conference series. We have the great pleasure today of talking with Svetlana Chmakova. And we're going to talk to her about her new book. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what the program is and what we're doing. My name is Calvin Reid. I'm a senior news editor at Publishers Weekly. I'm editor of PW Comics World, PW's online comics coverage, and I'm a co-host of More to Come, PW's weekly podcast on comics and graphic novel publishing. Books on Tap is our new program. But before we get to it, and before we get a chance to talk with Svetlana, I just want to mention a few things. First of all, this new event is sponsored by Yen Press. And you lucky devils, we're going to be giving away 5 signed copies of the Weird books. That's what we're going to hear to talk about, particularly Weird Books, volume number 1, Be Wary of the Silent Woods, the inaugural title in the series. You can enter to win by going to publishersweekly.com/books on tap live. I think if you look in the comments on Facebook, you'll see a live link to it. If you want to receive future notifications of our events, then go to publishersweekly.com/books on tap live, and then you can sign up there. And bonus factor, during a live event, audience members, you can get to ask Svetlana questions. Write them in the comments section of Facebook. And after the official interview, we will take audience from the questions. All right. So without further ado, this is a great treat for me to get a chance to Svetlana. And we're going to base this discussion around the new book, The Weird Books, Be Wary of the Silent Woods. But we're going to talk a little bit about a few other things. Svetlana is the author of such popular works as Night School and Awkward and Crush, but she's also a pivotal figure in the growth of the graphic novel format in North America, beginning with her early webcomic, Chasing Rainbows, her early graphic novel, Dramacon. Her work highlights the influence of manga on Western comics. And the embrace of her work by so many fans really marks the growth and the popularity of the middle grade graphic novel in the book trade. So Svetlana, there you go. So you've done a lot for us here, and so we're going to try and use this program, do a little bit for you and for your next book. So it's a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you.
Same here. Thank you for doing this, Calvin.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So I've teased your book a little bit. But before we get started, why don't you just give me a short a summation of the Weird Books?
All right, I'm terrible at this, so I wrote it down. I'm going to read it. So, The Weird Books, Be Wary of the Silent Woods, is a supernatural urban fantasy adventure set on the misty coasts of New England, land of storms, mosquitoes, and irate mermaids that throw trash right back at the tourists. The main characters are middle grade kids who are weirns, which is a special breed of witch that are born with guardian demon spirits called astrals. And these are little spirits that follow them around everywhere and are kind of like another arm that's also magic and steals cookies when you're not looking, because it likes cookies. And these little weird kids, they have to go to their magic school every night. This particular group of kids does it. They go through the Silent Woods, which is they're woods that are really creepily silent. Something happened there that made everything just go very, very quiet. And there is a possibly haunted mansion at the middle of it. That they're not supposed to go to, but of course they do. So danger and hilarity ensue.
I see. Well, I mean, one of the things about your books that's so delightful is your ability to create these communities on the magical side. No matter how like fantasy driven it is, you create this kind of vibrant, diverse community of kids that react to each other in just the ways that, we kind of expect people to react to. And then, as you said, mystery, magic, and hijinks ensue. And you've been able to do that across so many books and created this incredible legion of fans. But so we're going to jump right into the weird books. But first, why don't you give us a little bit more information about your background, which is really rich and really diverse in its own case and really interesting. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and your development as a cartoonist.
So I was born and raised in Russia, and I didn't have access to art education until I came to Canada when I was 16. My Canadian school had electives, so I was able to, as soon as I realized I could choose my classes, every art course I could find was going on my schedule. Every creative writing, I didn't speak much English, but every creative writing course that I could find went on my schedule. And the funny thing is, I actually almost didn't become an artist for a living because I was told by every adult in my life that art is not a real job. And technically they were correct.
Sure.
Technically, it is a very difficult job, very like no safety net, whatsoever. But I lived in Canada for, I guess, another 16 years. I finished classical animation diploma at Sheridan College there. That was an invaluable experience. It was animation training, but when I finished the animation training, it was the 2000. I'm sorry, it was the tail end of the 2000 recession. So all the studios were closed and nobody was hiring. And I went into freelance illustration for a while. But all the while I was drawing comics, and I actually ended up being contacted by one of the first webcomics collective, which was I believe it was called Webcomics Nation. They had a sister site called girlamatic.com, and the editor of the site reached out to me and asked me if I would like to contribute a comic to the site. I'm like, do I ever? Comics is something that I apparently can't not draw. So I ended up doing, I think, over 100 pages for them before I was ever published by, like, in the traditional book format. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question?
Indeed it is. And a quick follow-up here. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of manga? And I'm talking about, obviously, Japanese comics. Obviously, they figure prominently in your style, but how big an influence, when did you first embrace that particular kind of comic?
That is a very good question. It's very spread out. The comic that left the biggest impact on me, that made me want to do comics as a medium, like just completely sold me on it, was ElfQuest. I read the first issue in Russian
Interesting.
When I was 14, I think. And that first issue was all I had of ElfQuest or comics, like comics as a storytelling format and not just like short strips. And I read it to shreds. And my very first comics are just direct ripoffs of the ElfQuest world. My elves were very unique to me because they could turn into wolves rather than road wolves. But that was the beginning of the end for me, ElfQuest. I discovered manga when I moved to Canada and had actual access to a comic book shop. Post-Soviet Union, Russia didn't really have comic book shops yet. And it didn't before we left. But Canada did. So that's where I discovered the early releases of manga volumes from Dark Horse, I believe it was. or was it Antarctic Press? I can't remember who was publishing.
They both do manga.
Yeah, they were the only ones doing manga back then. Oh My Goddess, You're Under Arrest by Kosuke Fujishima was a big influence. Rumiko Takahashi, I think, was Viz from the beginning. But that was a huge influence on my budding storytelling forays. And also two of the biggest ones. One was Sailor Moon, the TV show.
Of course.
Is not influenced.
So now we're talking anime, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, it was all just visual influence. From Sailor Moon, it was, it's beautiful, it's colorful, and Usagi's face is the most expressive space in the world. It's this universe of expression. And I would this was pre-VCR, I would sit in front of the TV and I would try to copy every expression that she made so that I too could draw that. And then the other one, the big one that I remember is, I actually read in first year of college, Mars by Fuyumi Soryo. And the comic that I proposed to Girl-O-Matic was actually directly out of the desire to make a book just like Mars, even though Chasing Rainbows ended up being nothing like Mars. But its genesis was, I want to make a book just like this. How can I do that?
Great. So let's jump ahead really quickly. Maybe you can talk briefly a little bit about Dramacon, because I mean, that's the book that I really learned about you and responded to. And then I would love to hear you talk about Night School, because that's part of the weird kind of universe. So very quickly, and then let's talk weird.
Okay. So Dramacon first?
Yeah, talk about Dramacon.
So Dramacon I was doing Chasing Rainbows, 100+ pages for Girl-O-Matic when Tokyo Pop wrote to me out of the blue. They actually initially wanted Chasing Rainbows, but it did not work out for Chasing Rainbows. I don't know how much I'm at liberty to say, but
we're not trying to start controversies.
Yeah, long story short, I ended up doing Dramacon for them.
That's fine.
And I mean, Dramacon came out directly out of my. I used to do the con circuit pretty heavily, and I once again want to iterate. Nothing in my books is real. No people in my books are real. I get asked a lot if, is this character you? Or is this character based on somebody? No. I never based anybody in my books on real people. They might be an amalgam of character traits that I've encountered, but nobody's real.
Okay.
So yeah, Dramacon was.
Way.
Yeah. Yes, please. No real people. And Dramacon is directly inspired by the convention circuit, in the sense where, wouldn't it be fun if this happened? Some of the funner stuff, obviously, not the drama. So that was the Dramacon idea in a nutshell. Some drama and romance at an anime convention.
Yeah, wonderful book. Now, Night School. Tell us about Night School, and then we're going to segue into weird.
Night School is where my heart beats to this day. I love urban fantasy. I've always everybody's been to school, and I'm sure every school has had that one hallway where you're staying late after school for a club activity, or I don't know, maybe you forgot something in your locker and the hallway's abandoned, everybody's gone home, and that one light is flickering. And there's this just pool of darkness, and it just completely changes the feel of the space. And, having a writer's imagination, it always was very potent to me, with possibility, like what lives in that pool of darkness. Is it fun? Could we be friends? So that was the genesis of the idea of Night School for me. Just what could it look like when we're not there?
Yeah.
And the world just grew and grew from there. I've always been fascinated with the idea of, the witch and their familiar pet type creature is not new.
Astral, yes.
Yeah, but the idea is not new. It's been done and done and done. But the Weirns are mine. The Astrals are mine. It's my evolution on the idea.
Well, it's also a rich universe of characters and situations, and because you really kind of juggle together both, the hilarity and the calamity of school, but you've also, I mean, there's a darker element surrounding that usually drives the plot, a mystery, conflict, and night school is just full of all of that.
Yes, thank you for noticing.
That's
So
what we
as
do.
a writer, I have trouble. Uh, as a person, I have like I can't be dark all the time. I need the bit of fun somewhere. So heavy. I also don't want to always be happy in my work because that's not. It feels fake when I write it. When I read it, it doesn't. I mean, I get through a few pages of that. I'm like, well, this is not for me. So in my own work, I try to walk that line of. I mean, that's what life is. Life can get heavy, and but humans as a species, we've found ways to cope with that. Storytelling is one of them. It's how we are understood, how we try to be understood by our neighbors, our peers. Um, so it's just that's sort of the philosophy that I follow in my work, and that's why I can't do without drama and I can't do without the fun. It has to be both for me.
And you know that it works for us too, your readers. So let's talk a little bit about the first book in the Weird Books uh, um, trilogy. So tell us a little bit about the plot. I mean, once again, and I'm also curious: are there connections between Night School and Weird that maybe we should know? Something you could signal to us? I'm not talking about spoilers here. Um, but there is a scenario, the night school, it appears, but even better, a community of characters that they may be a little magical, but they seem like people that we know, and the diversity too.
Uh, yeah, so the book. Welcome to my book. The diversity it keeps getting mentioned. I actually, I mean, my town in Russia was incredibly white. It was something that, like, I didn't really have access to the world in its entirety until I moved to Canada. And my school was very diverse. So when I started writing, I was basically writing about my Canadian school, which was incredibly multicultural and um, yeah, it felt like a slice of the world. It really did. And the night school world specifically, the first series was set in New York, which is also a slice of the world. It feels in its makeup. So that's that. And I actually lost my train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question again?
What was the question? The question. Well, really, I wanted you to talk about
Oh, the
Weird
characters
Books,
being
but
relatable.
yes, and
Mhm.
the diversity. I mean, one of the things. I mean, early on, from really your earliest books, you had different kind of characters, different kind of background, not just white characters, obviously. And in the Weird Books, obviously, there's a cousin, right, of a different
Uh-huh.
that clearly has a different background, a biracial character, it seems.
Oh, that's
So
right. And she's a Leyburn.
yeah, there you
You
go.
were asking about the connection to the previous
Yes, yeah,
series.
yeah. And I was wondering if there a connection between the characters or some other things that you might want to bring out.
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil
Yeah,
too
no
much.
spoilers.
People who have read the original series will remember the Leyburn name as being a very prominent character. Um, the Leyburn name in this book, in the new series, it's mentioned. I don't know if it'll come into play later on, But there is a connection to that family. It's a very large and powerful family. The Leyburns are. So the family reunions are very interesting. But so there's that connection. I don't know if it'll come into play. It might just be a mention. And the biggest connection is it's set in the same universe. So it's the same rules. The new series, what it's doing, you don't have to read one in order to enjoy the other, but they do complement each other in the sense that they both develop different sort of parts of the world. For example, one of the complaints I had about the original series, I'm sorry, I never explained what astrals are. I just sort of dropped the reader into the world and like they had to figure it out on their own. This series does explain what astrals are and what they do. So in that sense, there's just more elaboration on the rules, on the mythology, and just how stuff works in the world of the weird books.
And the astrals show great personality throughout the book as well, so that's something else you can look forward to. But tell us, did we go into the major plot the major plot points of the book, because there are missing people go missing in the weird. Kids go missing, and that sends your characters. And maybe you want to mention the main characters, Alice, Naya, and Desh. Yes,
I believe it's actually pronounced Ailish. It's an Irish name.
Ailish, thank you for correcting me.
It's a. I didn't know. I thought it looked cool, and then I looked up the spelling, like, oh, and it's also pronounced differently. Ailish is a young weird that goes to the night school mentioned in my earlier spiel, and that's her astral there on the screen that you see. And she lives with her grandmother. Her parents are away right now, so she's roughing it with grandma above her magic store. Grandma is amazing, and everybody should love grandma. And then she's got her cousin. Her name is Naya. So 2 cousins. Naya is her age, and then Desh is Naya's little brother, who can be a brat. Everybody loves him except for Naya, because she's his sister, and that's her job, to not love her brother. And this is their world on the screen. This tiny town called Latham in New England. It's a human town during the day. The way that the night realm works, it sort of attaches itself around a human location when it's human passing night creatures that live there. So at night, it just sort of shifts a little and changes so that while humans sleep, the night creatures can go to school, get a burger, get a coffee, and live their life under the warm embrace of the night and the moon.
Well, I want to return though to your ability to create community, and I think we mentioned a little bit about how you use schools, obviously, which is all about community and I say community as it's a rambunctious combination of people that care about people and maybe don't always care about people or think they don't care about them, but they do, and they're funny and they're charming and they draw you into the story. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you use, because this comes to bear in some of your other non-magical books with the Barry Brooks series. I think that really shows off also your skills at creating these characters that, care about each other, fight with each other, bicker with each other, but sort of come together in the end. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to put together characters in this way?
Again, thank you for asking that. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to create that kind of community. It's something that I didn't have when I went to middle school. I was the only bookworm in my class, and treated unkindly by my peers. And it was pretty lonely. So these books, in a way, I write them for 12-year-old little Svet, because to be able to, some of the questions that I had about humans in general as I was growing up, like I didn't understand why. I mean, kids, mini
Yeah.
humans, right? Learning how to human, figuring stuff out. And those pack instincts are so strong at that age, when you're, trying to find your voice, your place in the sotum. I don't know if that's an English word, in your social enclave.
Yeah, sure. Your
Um,
your social group, sure.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
peers, or in your peers.
yeah. Like your little your little world of
Yeah.
your current surrounding people, and there was just stuff that went on that I thought was very wrong.
Yeah.
People would just sort of band and choose a target, a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I say target, but it would be a kid, and just um, abuse them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was in no social position to be like, stop it, you must stop it right now. um, Whenever I tried, I would end up being abused too. And I didn't understand why people did that. It was so obviously wrong. Like, stop doing that, don't do that. But they still did it. And these are questions that I struggle with to this day, and it's themes that I explore in the Berrybrook books.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Awkward and Crush and yes, also
Brave.
and Brave. Oh yes, of course. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Brave was a very difficult book to write, partly because of just me trying to revisit all those times when, you know, Forever Aged in my memory is a story. No, I can't share that. No.
Okay.
Anyway, it ended up being, the girl that was bullied and me against the class, and it was
Wow.
not a
Mm-hmm.
pretty scene.
Wow. Mm.
Um, and yeah, I had questions. I had
Yeah.
questions that were not being answered by the adults in my life. And now, at the ripe age of 40, I'm trying to explain this to my 12-year-old self, as I'm slowly learning more about how humans work and how they don't
Yeah.
work and how they still screw a lot of things up. But we talked briefly about, it feels like middle school, when sort of kids are in that great
Mm.
development area of no longer kids, not yet adults,
Yeah.
and they're learning how to sort of enter. It's this the gray area, the
Yeah.
transitional area, and it becomes the dynamics that develops there, the behavior patterns, the interaction patterns that they sort of migrate into high school, get polished up and
Mm-hmm.
um, intensified, and then they don't stop there. They
Yeah.
transfer over into the workplace. I'm sure we've all met people who, like, you could swear you've seen them in high school, and they just, like, they got older, they didn't grow up. So I just, middle school seems like such a rife ground for exploring these dynamics
Yeah.
before they sort of escalate and move on into the grown-up world.
I see. Well,
Where
you've
they,
certainly put them to use as a platform, and obviously they have great emotional power for you as well. All the better to translate into stories that will, that your readers can get, and that you can pass on these lessons to young readers.
I hope they help.
Yes, I think that they will. So look, as we're getting to the point now where I want to get some questions from the audience, and I should apologize, I neglected. Did I ask people to send? Yes, I think I did. That they could send in questions. So I've got a few. So why don't I pull out some here, and instead of just answering my questions, you can answer questions from some of your fans. All right. Let's see. So this is from, I don't have a last name. This is from Maureen, came in through Facebook. What is the biggest challenge in writing a graphic novel? Or maybe talk about your process for writing a
Yeah,
graphic novel.
the biggest challenge is it's so graphic. A novelist, a graphic. You something that my early work, I used to just do a script and then do tiny thumbnails for page layouts. Until I've realized that it's just so much. I mean, a graphic novel is basically a story being told in two languages. You've got the words, which are carriers of certain information. It's kind of like a code that we humans use for um, transferring information into each other's heads. And then you have pictures, which in a sense can be a lot heavier with information than words. But then, some concepts they just can't explain. So combining the two, you have the super team that has to work together. So when I draw a graphic novel now, I always storyboard it as I write it. So the dialogue goes in with the page layouts, where the action happens, where the person is standing, their expression, the way that panels sort of lead toward a certain outcome for the reader, just like building up tension, and then you open a page spread and it's this reveal of this shocking surprise. It's very difficult to do that in the script. I have to see it, the way that the visual language is working, and is it working correctly? And that's where my editor
Yes. How do you work with editors? Yeah.
very closely.
Yes. Yeah. Tell us about your editor a little bit. Yeah, Julian.
She's amazing. Julian is incredible.
Hi, Julian.
Is she in the audience?
I don't know whether she is, but maybe at some point she may see this. So,
but yeah, we work very closely. I need a lot of hand holding because I have a lot of self doubt. So I send my stuff once it's no longer burning my eyes. I'll send it to her. It's like, okay, this is presentable. Can you please check it over? Sometimes scenes that I think are great, she'll read them and she'll be like, okay, I sort of see what you were trying to do. You're not quite getting there. And I'd be like, what? It's perfect. But then a few days later, I'll read it and like, okay, you were right.
I know. Don't you hate admitting to editors that they're right?
No. We're at a point in our working relationship where.
Okay, there you go. You're very mature.
Even if I fight back, I know she's right.
There you go.
So it's like I have to maintain some sense of independence, but no, it's a boon to have her eyes on this because she knows what I'm trying to say with my work at this point, so she's able to help me say what I want to say with great efficiency and clarity.
Let's see, another question here. Now, you've written for other age groups, right? You've written for YA, or your books, they've gone back and forth. But now you're focusing on middle grade, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me get one of the question from a member of the audience, I think Sarah Hall, what grade level has been your favorite to write for?
What an interesting question. So YA is something that I love just because there's a lot more stuff that I can talk about that I would like to talk about with my work. But middle grade has been, once I sort of moved a little older, Awkward started out being for a younger age group, and I just couldn't help it. It aged up as I wrote it. So it's that transitional period that I was talking about between not being a child to being a teen, the turbulent few years. I think that's a very good space for me. I've been very comfortable in it. So I think I can see myself doing more and more.
Yeah. And you certainly talked about how you have this emotional background from middle school that seems to motivate some of your work that certainly makes that category.
Yeah, that and the fact that a lot of people seem to relate. Like nobody has a good time in middle school. Nobody.
Yeah. Here's a question I think is kind of appropriate for now, from Michael. Where are you? Well, he wants to know where you're based, but also how are you working and handling the pandemic and working under pandemic?
Well, yeah, both me and my husband.
For comics artists, that's an interesting question because comics artists actually sort of, they almost live under
it's always a pandemic around here.
They're always sheltering in place. So
yes. Yeah, we it's been interesting. I have a son now. He's 2 now, but Crush specifically was an extra test in cartoonist endurance because he was born via C-section, so I was recovering from that while drawing Crush. I had 3 months to finish the art for Crush, while taking care pretty much full time of an infant. So I guess I sort of have been trained for this pandemic business. I'm very good at staying in one place and working and getting stuff done. Also, my husband is a great help. We sort of take parenting shifts. He parents, I work. I parent, he works.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'm sure the women out there are happy to hear that.
Yes. Husbands who do their share of parenting the best husbands.
All right. Let's see what else we have here. Some of the questions are sort of about you getting started. Did you have a book proposal? I mean, you did mention earlier that really your present publisher kind of saw your work and went to you. Have you done book proposals? Or have you had to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, every book starts out as a pitch. For Tokyo Pop specifically, because they saw my work on Chasing Rainbows, they decided that obviously I can storytell and draw. I think Dramacon was just a paragraph description of what I wanted to do. And there was that big push to just sign anybody up. Yeah, I think it was just we did a whole pitch Bible afterwards. For the
who's your agent, by the way?
My agent is the amazing Judy Hansen. I don't know if she's in here, but yeah, she's
hi Judy.
she's well known.
She is indeed. She is indeed.
And but she was not representing me for Dramacon. I was still very new and did not know how publishing worked at all.
Well, that's some of the questions I'm getting about that are from people saying, "How do you get started? Did you have a did you?"
I had comics online, and a publisher reached out to me, and that's something that has sort of rung through my entire career. For night school specifically, because Dramacon did so well, there was actually 3 publishing houses that approached me, like, "What's your next work?" And
not bad.
Yeah, so just it's make sure your work is seen, and that people like to read it.
Well, that's really interesting too. Yeah. I've got another question here where what's this? Well, this is a question about, and it's from Tommy, and it says, "Are graphic novels easier or harder to publish than other books?" But this is an interesting question. But I think in your particular case, and I'd be curious to know what you think of it. There was a then and there's a now. It's a very different market for graphic novels now. I certainly than when you started. But maybe you could address that a little bit. How hard was it for you to get a publisher back in the day?
Again, I was always approached. I had my work online, and people who read it were like, "Oh, hey, I would like to see more of that." So I would get contacted both by my illustration clients and so having a portfolio that is engaging and captivates your potential money-paying audience is an essential thing. Yeah, I didn't even promote or anything. I just being part of a collective helps. Being on girlomatic.com with amazing creators like Erica Moen was on there, and does she go by Iron Spike? The publisher of Iron Circus
Spike
Comics.
Trotman.
Spike
Trotman, who obviously started her own press, Iron Circus Comics.
Yes, yeah. I mean, she's done just incredible.
Spike is a cartoonist as well as a publisher. Yes, she is. She's a force of nature, is what she is.
She is. She's incredible.
Well, let's see. What else we got here? How do you feel? This is from I can't make the name out, but obviously, I mean, on the last question, part of what I was talking about is that we're living in a different world that, as I said earlier, you helped to create this world where graphic novels aimed at young readers, in particular, book format comics, have really exploded in popularity. They've become a part of the book trades in ways that they really weren't when you first started, which was really kind of the beginning of this, of the arc that we're on now of books, of comics in the book world. But I'll shut up because I give this speech all the time. But what about classroom learnings? We're living in an age now. Look, I'm a lot older than you, and when I was a kid, believe me, teachers did not want to see you with comics. But it's a different world now. So what is your take on comics in the classroom?
I think they belong in every classroom under the sun. Comics is what really saved my reading. When I came to Canada, I didn't speak enough English didn't understand enough English because I was a bookworm growing up. I lived in books. I lived at my local library. But I get to Canada, suddenly I can't read. Everything is in English. Reading with a dictionary is a tortuous experience. It is so difficult. So having comics like having the images carrying that visual information and having the words together, telling very powerful stories and unraveling very powerful concepts for me, that I was able to grasp. I was able to be a reader again through comics. And, once I've accumulated enough English language to break through the wall of code that is written language, it's just comics are still a steady part of my diet, of my reading diet. And will always stay that way. There are things you can never say with words. Only images will do. Like world events. You can describe some things until you're blue in the face, and one picture will sear it into the mind of your viewer forever. Like they'll never get rid of certain images in their heads. It's just a very powerful medium, and it needs to be taught. It needs to be learned. It needs to be everywhere.
Okay. Let's see. So, okay, we're winding down here. I think we have one more question about, do you know what your next Barry Brooks series is going to be, the next book in that series?
I do, and I don't know how much I'm supposed to say. I'm writing it right now.
Well, the tease right there it will be enough to get your fans
it starts with an E.
excited. It starts with,
because it follows the alphabet A, B, C, D. So the next book starts with E.
All right. Well, look, Svetlana, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you again. We haven't talked with each other in many years. We talked about this a little bit before, Book Expo years ago. But I've been a fan of your work.
It feels like.
Yes, it does. But now, before we go, I have to say a few things to wind it up. But thanks so much for talking to you. Good luck on the Weird books. They're fun, exciting, more great characters and great situations. I think your fans are going to be more than pleased. Oh, yeah. Okay, but before we finish up here, remember this is the first show of Books on Tap Live, PW's new interview program. The next event is going to be on July 8th, and we're going to be talking with the novelist Carrie Lonsdale, who will be discussing her new book, Side Trip. So just remember, you can sign up to receive a reminder of the event at publishersweekly.com/Books on Tap Live. Hope you can join us then. Thank you, Svetlana. And this has been our first Books on Tap Live.
Woo!
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
That was amazing.
Take care. I had a great time. Good luck on the book.
Thank you as well. Do we say bye? How does this work?
I think we just did.
Oh,